Hey, this is Vic Stone from Vindicator, and you are experiencing.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Poppitt's Corner. Super excited as always to be doing this. I got Mr. Shannon Fry helping me today. Shannon, how you doing, man?
I'm good, Tyler. How are you?
Tyler, I
Tanner.
love it. Almost. But that's our guest. So
Tanner and Tyler.
We'll
It's
get
easy to get
that
it mixed.
to
I'm good, man.
Too good.
right. So, what should we call it? So we got Mr. Tyler Satterlee here. A blessed curse. Tyler, how you doing, man? Thanks again for giving us a few minutes of your time and hanging to hang with us. So, how you been?
Yeah, for sure, man. Thank you guys for inviting me on here, man. It's an honor finally getting on here. Hell yeah.
Appreciate it, buddy. Appreciate it. So the basis of the show is we're going to literally go through your entire musical career and tell some stories and just have some fun with you. So if you're ready, man, I'd love to get started, and I'm sure Shannon would. So you ready?
Absolutely, dude. Yep.
So right off the bat, give me some of your first kind of recollections of just hearing music for the first time, and what was the band that actually brought you into wanting to just be so enthralled and entrenched in just music in general?
Well, I mean, like, I grew up in a very musical household. My parents are always playing classic rock, the big hits from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. A lot of dance music, a lot of everything from like disco to new wave, all the way into hard rock. So I always had multiple, like, just a huge influx of stuff just growing up. So I was always like musically inclined in the fan sense, where I always enjoyed it, and I love the escapism of it. I always enjoyed the fact that music, no matter what you were going through, could kind of just transport you to a different place. And I think that's a very healthy and vital thing for a lot of us human beings out there, you know? So when it came to metal and stuff, probably right around the late 90s is when I started to see on VH1, they used to start doing these behind the music episodes where they were showcasing all these hard rock and heavy metal bands from the 70s and 80s and their stories, trials, tribulations, and stuff like that, you know? And a lot of the music really was just like, oh man, this kicks ass, you know, whether it was Twisted Sister or Van Halen or early Metallica, stuff like that, where it was like, you know, this has got like the groove, but it's also got that catchy kind of melody thing going. So I started tuning into that a lot, and then it just kept going into stuff like Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Saxon Videos, you know, all these more obscure bands. So that really started to get addictive. I was like, what is this? And that was when I started going to my local record store in Auburn, California, that was called Off the Record. And that's when I actually started to browse and start getting my first cassette tapes, because I couldn't afford the fucking CDs at the time. So I had to settle for cassette tapes. So I got like Quiet Riot's Metal Health was one of my first ones. Twisted Sister, Stay Hungry, Van Halen, 1984, Metallica, Ride the Lightning, and stuff like that. And that right there was just kind of like, why is there so much good music coming from this particular era? Like, is there something about it? Like, what is this? So that right there kind of just opened the floodgate and basically never looked back and just took over, you know? And then just, I had to collect everything. I had to try to get everything. I had to hear everything, you know? And that's what really started to get me into hard rock and heavy metal.
Interesting. So
Nice.
I guess going off of this whole point here, so when you were looking through the record bins and whatnot, were you just discovering these bands? Obviously, you mentioned behind the music and whatnot, but was there a point to where you were looking at just album covers and buying it just strictly off the album cover, or just to like, I don't know, see what this actually sounded like, or was it just strictly you would go to the record shop after kind of hearing it just on the TV?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It was kind of like that last breath of that combination, which I'm sure many people, you know, experienced like in the 70s and 80s, where you saw the video and then you went to the store and then it was like, oh, where can I get this? Whoa, who is that? And I remember seeing the video for Aces High and Run to the Hills, and I loved it. I mean, it was awesome. And right at the time, Maiden was promoting their Brave New World album, so they had The Wicker Man as the newest single at the time, which is great because it was new, but it was like, what is this band's older material like? So when I went to the record store, I went to I in the heavy metal section, and they had a huge thing for Maiden, like a ton. And immediately just the artwork with their mascot Eddie with all the shit, it was like, oh my God, what is this? This is the coolest looking shit. If it sounds that cool and it has this cool imagery, it's the total package right here. So Maiden was probably one of the first bands in terms of like, just off of that album art was like, I gotta hear this. I gotta find out what is in this, you know. And they became my favorite band because of that. That was a huge catalyst for that.
Sure. No, interestingly enough, what were some of your friends listening to around this time, and what age were you at with what we're talking about here?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question, because it was right at that period of time where new metal was like really big. It was like all the rage, the Limp Bizkits, the whole, you know, there's that whole genre that was going on, and all my friends and peers were all interested in that kind of stuff. The Corns, the Sum 41s, all of that kind of stuff. And it's just, I mean, that's for everybody. That's their own flavor taste, if you want, that people want to listen to. That's fine. But for me, it was just like, oh my God, there's so much killer music from this particular era. Like, why are you guys kind of listening to that when there's all this? Because it was almost like they didn't want to acknowledge the past. It was almost kind of like they just wanted to only acknowledge what was going on and what was current, and like this kind of like hipster kind of like vibe where only now matters and disregard the past. And for me, it was like the polar opposite. It was like, oh my God, this stuff for whatever reasons is just not appealing to me. It's the past music that is just like this sacred entity almost, because so many bands and so many of those albums were so good. And so I was very intrigued by that, you know. So it was kind of like there's kind of like this cultural gap that started between like me and a couple of my other friends, and then the larger group afterward, because it was like, oh, those guys are going to be like the hardcore metalheads, and they're either stuck in the past and that's all they listen to, kind of thing, you know. So there was that weird kind of like cultural divide going on at that point with that, you know.
Interesting. Now, was this right around the time that you started to play an instrument?
It was actually before then. It was a few years before. This would have been probably right around 1998, 1999. So I was about 11, 12 years old at that point, and I had a couple of uncles that played guitar and stuff like that. And my uncle Rick actually was the one that a couple years later, right around the 8th grade, where, you know, people start talking about, you know, either career oriented stuff, or, you know, if you're going to be going into sports like football team, baseball, soccer, all that kind of stuff. He brought up the idea and the notion of like the guitar and stuff. He's like, have you ever tried, you know, picking up a guitar or jamming on a guitar ever? And I was like, no, I mean, I don't know jack and shit about that yet, you know? So he actually loaned me his guitar and let me have it for a couple years. So I actually started on acoustic guitar, and that's basically got, you know, the flame lit for that. And right around 8th grade is when I started taking lessons, and that's when I started to, you know, think like, oh, this is actually like pretty fun. You know, it was almost kind of like this instant like love and connection and stuff like that. So I was always like the guy walking around with like the guitar, and was known as like, oh, that's that one guy that, you know, listens to metal and has that guitar, you know. Like, it was just, nobody else was like doing that there. It just wasn't like the thing, because, you know, it's all about sports and peer groups and all that kind of thing. So the guitar definitely either found me or I found it. I don't really know, but that's what really got me and the guitar going, you know. So got to give props to my uncle Rick for that.
It's interesting that you say you were like the guy, because we all had them in our high. I had them in junior high and high school. And I'm sure we all had the guys where they would walk around with their guitars. Now I'm curious, did you start to find a click in did you say junior high or high school that you were walking around with a guitar?
Yeah. It was actually right in 8th grade was where I was kind of like the isolated guy. But I found that as soon as, you know, the following year, freshman year, you know, it's like, oh, you're in high school now. It's like, you know, you're starting to go into the real world and meeting other people from all over the place. So at my high school, there was this guitar group, you know, and it was kind of like this judgmental kind of hierarchy, because there was like the freshman guitar players, the sophomore guitar players, the junior, and then the senior guys that had been there, for 4 years. So everybody was always constantly judging and looking at everybody and all that. And I don't want to say they welcomed me, but they were happy that there was at least like, myself and maybe a couple others that were interested in music and playing guitar oriented music when so many people at that time just were not really interested in that.
It's interesting. Shannon, you got anything?
No, I'm good.
Okay,
I'm just
cool.
still listening.
Good,
It's
good.
an
You're
interesting
still here.
story.
So obviously you're walking around with the guitar. Do you start to notice other musicians that are playing bass or drums or any of this? When was the point when you kind of found that there are other musicians into the heavier style of music that you were into? And was there like a small pocket of bands forming around this time?
Well, interesting enough, when I picked up the guitar from my uncle Rick, my drummer, who's also my best friend Derek Bean, who I've literally known my drummer since I was 3. We actually met in fucking preschool, and it's just that itself is a tale to be told too. He was really interested in drums, so he actually got started on drums probably around the 6th and 7th grade. So he was really into like percussion and stuff like that. So by the time we were freshmen, he had already been playing drums for like 3 years. So he already had his own kit. So the goal now was like, how can I now, with an acoustic guitar, graduate into an electric guitar, convince my parents, Christmas gift, birthday gift, something, get an electric so that I can actually be heard jamming with him. So luckily enough, the Christmas my freshman year, my folks actually saved up and got me my first Fender Squire guitar package and stuff. So now I actually have the ability with volume to play. And that right there was when Derek and I first started jamming between drums and guitar. And it was just basically everything from early Maiden, Priest, Saxon, early Megadeth, early Metallica, Slayer, and stuff like that. And those were kind of like the blueprint bands that we try to like model the sound after, because at the time in 2001, 2002, it just seemed like so much of the world and so many people, it was like this like past thing and no one really cared about it. And for us, it meant the world to us because it was just such powerful music. We were just thinking like, it would be cool if we started playing this type of music. It'd be cool if we did our own brand at some point with this. And because we're freshmen, we're not on the sports teams. We're not nowhere near in the popular group or even like college oriented or minded at this point. Let's see where we can take this band. So from freshman year to senior year, we were basically a cover band and just learning our instruments and learning our chops, just trying to learn and listen as much as humanly possible, just living it, just with metal and all these different bands and styles and stuff.
Interesting. Now, when was the point when you discovered that there were other people such as yourself that actually wanted to play more old school style of music? Because you mentioned earlier that it wasn't prominent. You didn't really see anybody else doing it. So when was that point where it's like, oh, wait, there are a shitload of other people doing this?
Yeah. It was just happenstance, I guess, at the time that like, we were in our area, I know Shannon was, in his area and stuff, doing his own thing. And once you kind of like find out about it, it was probably like right around the end of our senior year, right around between 18 and 19 is when we actually started to network in Northern California and play originals. We started putting out a couple of EPs and stuff like that by that point. And all of a sudden you start realizing that there's been this whole time, similar to ourselves, these other people that felt very much the same way and were also trying to do their own versions and their own stamp on a lot of this old school style of bands and music out there. So it didn't really happen while we were in high school just because of the isolation factor. But once we started playing within Sacramento, the Sacramento and the Bay Area, that's when it really started to open up and we started to network and actually find and meet other like-minded people and got to see like, oh, wow, like it does starting to seem like right around 2005, 2006 onward that a lot of people really are hungering and enjoy this old school form of music and these old school bands, and it's much bigger and it's way more of a network than we could have even imagined at that time, because it was, you know, like growing up in Colfax in this area. I mean, it's basically like the woods and stuff. You don't have that cultural influx yet, and you actually go out and about and travel. So it wasn't until we were about 18, you know, you're 17, 18 years old, where we actually got out and got to actually meet other people, shows and stuff like that, and actually really meet other like metalheads and stuff. You know, it was almost kind of like the promised land in a way, because it was like, oh my God, there's like way more other people out here. Thank God, you know, because yeah, 4 years of being stuck in the woods and like nobody, you know, like being into metal or really like that, being called devil worshippers and getting called into the office for like, I mean, people like literally thought we were satanic and shit like that. It was really, it was pretty archaic.
So is this when you started getting into thrash? Is that the same time period? Did you discover the thrash stuff at the same time you were discovering the other stuff?
Basically,
and was playing guitar an evolution into that? I'm like,
probably. Yeah, I think like, you know, like the entry level bands like the early Metallica, the early Megadeth, early Slayer, is amazing as that all that stuff was. Like learning that like those chops on the guitar really got it going. Discovering that there's an entire family tree with that was really, really life-changing and revealing. Just knowing how many bands and how many mixed genres of them. You got the death thrash, you got the crossover, you got speed metal, you got, you know, power metal, like all these different things. All those were like different flavors of guitar playing. So that right around then, probably like 16, 17 years old, combined with the guitar world, was like, oh my God, this is like, I gotta up my game. I gotta really like, there's so much out there to keep challenging yourself with, and to keep striving to be better and keep pushing those boundaries. Because it wasn't like, oh, you know, you heard Iron Man, you heard Priest or Saxon, it just stops there. It's like, no, man, like you got to keep going with that. There's so many other bands and guitar styles and stuff out there. So rhythm wise, it was really, really like thrash oriented with those bands, and lead wise, it was a lot of like those shred guys from the 80s, the George Lynch's, the Warren DeMartinis, Randy Rhoads, and Jake E. Lee. I mean, there was such an amazing entourage of those shred guys out there, you know. So it's kind of like a mixture between the rhythm guitar of the thrashing and then the shred thing from the more hard rock or 80s hair metal bands, if you will, you know. So it's almost kind of like, you know, like there were so many good musicians from the past. It was like, fuck, man, like I gotta really woodshed, and I gotta really put effort into this early on. And that really started in high school, just knowing how many fucking good players there are out there in bands, you know. Kind of overwhelming a little bit, because there was so much good music from that era.
Right. Now, I have a quick question. So obviously you mentioned some of the Devastator kind of era, but can we get into just the essence of how the band got together and how you guys decided on Devastator itself?
Mm-hmm. We started with the name Atrocity in high school. That was kind of like our band name, Atrocity, with an S instead of a C. And it turns out, obviously, there was another like famous band, you know, that was like, you know, legit signed and stuff like that, copyright and all that. So we changed it Devastator. And from Devastator, we were a trio at that point. That's really where like the thrash metal sound and vibe really was, when we were really trying to hone in on that and do our own thing with that. But also like our vibe and our attitude in Devastator was really, like, looking back on it, was really, really very punk like in the defiance sense and the anger sense and the whole kind of just, you know, fuck you, who gives a shit, fuck off. I mean, like we were so pissed off during that period of time. I mean, like, really, it was just like us against the world, you know, until, I mean, we eventually started networking and, you know, united with other bands and scenes and pockets of stuff all over the place, which is great. But those early Devastator like years, man, I mean, it was just like fucking, it was just us against the world, you know? Like, I mean, we had that kind of like basic foundation of support and stuff like that. But when you're really going into this kind of industry, like we did early on, you know, we started opening for bands like Overkill and Creator and stuff like that really early on, like 17, 18 years old. So you start dealing with the industry, you start dealing with the club owners, you start dealing with that reality of the way people are and how harsh and cold this industry really is. So kind of, I don't want to say it jaded us, it just kind of, you know, toughened our armor up a little bit, where we're kind of like this defensive kind of like, you know, fuck you attitude kind of thing, little suspicious of like a lot of things and people and club owners and promoters and, you know, other bands trying to pose as certain things when in reality they weren't and stuff like that, you know? So it was really like us against the world in that Devastator like period of time, you know? I mean, we grew out of that, obviously, you know, as you mature and stuff like that. But that Devastator period of time was really like that, like us against the world, pissed off attitude kind of thing.
Right. Now, how much of pay to play came into the fold during these early club days? Because I don't know if it was prevalent in Northern California like it was in SoCal here, but I mean, how much of that actually played a part in the, like you said, you guys versus the world, that fuck you mentality?
Yeah, that was the pay to play thing was a huge pill to fucking swallow for us, like realizing that, you know. And I mean, to an extent, I mean, in reality, what you're doing is you're paying for advertising. I mean, it's like when you see bands now when they get opening slots on tours and stuff, people think, oh, that's great and stuff like that. But the reality is you are paying for advertisement. That's what it is. That's your name under the either marquee or billboard and stuff. So you're basically paying to play in that kind of sense anyway. And for us at a club level thing, without being on a label, management, booking agency, anything like that, it was like, fuck, man. Well, if we want to get into, you know, an audience and get out there more, get out of like this area more, you know, let's give it a shot. Let's see what happens with this. And for the Southern California shows, you know, we played a bunch down there. There was only a couple that we actually did pay to play, which was one was opening for Sodom in 2006, early 2006, 2007, I think it was, at the Key Club. And then at the Whiskey A Go-Go, we opened for Overkill down there. And those are the two times when we really had to do the pay to play thing, like with the ticketing thing. And it was surprisingly, with promotion and online flyering and meeting with people, we got rid of like a good amount. So the amount that we actually ended up having to play wasn't as much as it could have been. But, you know, when you're, you know, 18, 19 years old and stuff, and you're having to give $700, $800, depending on what show it is to these club owners and stuff like that, just to get that visibility, you know, it's, again, was just kind of like this, like, you know, get punched in the nuts kind of thing. And you keep going, you know. And luckily for us with those shows, they were good, positive experiences in that sense of getting out there, playing real clubs, and you got to prove yourself, you know. It's that type of industry. You got to get out there and you got to just put the blinders on and fucking just go into battle. You know, fuck it. Who gives a shit? We're from the fucking woods. Fuck it. Let's just go for it. Who knows what's going to happen, you know? So it's just like looking back on it, I mean, financially it was kind of risky, you know, because you didn't have a whole lot of money at, you know, 18 years old to be doing shit like that all the time.
Right. Now, how much of, and I would hopefully, when Devastator was on my specific radar, I found out about you guys through a forum called Thrash Unlimited, and I'm just kind of curious how much in your mind here, how much of that forum played into people discovering Devastator.
Wow, Thrash Unlimited, man. Yeah. No, looking back, I mean, that was good. I think like stuff like that at the time, you know, again, it's kind of interesting because this is that like pre-social media era that it is now, you know? So it was almost kind of like that bridging period between the only way you met people was going to a show and sticking out a flyer and physically meeting somebody. And then it's like, oh, there's this new online tool that could be utilized and really get yourself out there more. So I think stuff like Thrash Unlimited really did help us, you know, have another reference point. You know, if you can't see us, if you're from out of state or a faraway city, you can't physically meet up and hang out or go to a show. Try and check us out on here and see if you dig us or not, you know? And I think stuff like that was really, really important for a lot of like bands like ours and others starting up at that point where you couldn't physically meet all the time like that, you know, or in print with magazines, like you weren't getting in magazines or anything either.
Well, it seemed like at that time too, and Shannon probably can vouch for this or add on to this. It seemed like when we had that specific forum, that's when we all started to care about new bands. And then it seemed like after that specific forum died out and the MySpace and whatnot, then everybody started to like revert back to the old school bands only. So it just seems like to me, Thrash Unlimited was like a vital cog into how most of you guys were getting discovered by us fans or labels and whatnot. So it's just interesting to document that kind of stuff. So Shannon, I don't know if you can add on to any of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that did have an effect on Devastator. I remember that. That had an exactly as you're saying. But how did that affect you overall? I mean, how do you feel that Thrash Unlimited helped you?
Oh, I think like, you know, like stuff like that, you know, at the time, like, you know, with just the notion that we were even getting out or anything was even happening, even related to our band, like, you know, like, oh, like I heard about you guys on Thrash Unlimited. To us, that was like getting a Grammy award, even just if it was one person, you know. So things like that, it meant the absolute world to us. Stuff like, because we never even thought that like this whole scene or bands or any of this old school stuff could ever even become like a thing again, you know. So for a band like us coming from, you know, the backwoods of gold country in Northern California, you know, it meant the complete world to us to even be mentioned or referenced or featured in interviews or online chats or forums or any of those like means, man. I mean, is to this day, it's still awesome that things like that happened. You know, I mean, it really is important to us, you know, having those little spots that were available to people that may or may not have like heard about us before, you know, because for us, it was just like, oh my God, people like have heard of us. They know of us, you know. I mean, to us, it was just completely mind boggling. You know, like
Totally.
we never even thought like that was like even going to be a thing or even like a possibility. So things like that are just like incredible, you know, incredibly grateful for stuff like that.
Totally. And I want to, this is all going to play part into the Thrash Unlimited stuff, but can we venture a little bit beforehand and walk me through your first studio experience and the how that actually came to be?
Okay, so like I said before, like it was basically freshman year to senior year. We were like we were a cover band and stuff, just living in the garage and basement, just woodshedding, you know, just everything, like every weekend. And then when we weren't rehearsing, we were in our own homes, just playing and just doing shit. You know, there was nothing else. That was all we did and lived for. So right around the end of junior year, I brought up the notion of the guys. I was like, you know, we've been playing a shitload of these covers, the early Slayers, the Megadeth, the Iron Maidens and stuff like that. I got some stuff on the back burner that I just been fucking around with. Let's see where we can, you know, take these original things. So out of nowhere, it was just kind of like, you know, one band practice. We just started, you know, like, okay, so check this riff out. This is kind of like the drum idea I had over with it. You know, let's collaborate and see where this can go. And that's where we started actually playing original-esque oriented stuff. And then we really started to hone it after that. It was like, yes, I think we've spent enough time with these covers right now. You know, we're going to be graduating high school at the same time. It's time for us to start doing our own thing, you know, with our own inspirations and our own flavor and all that. And that's when we really started to write original material. So by that point, senior year, we had about 5 original songs. And this was right before 2005. This is like right around Christmas of 2004. There was a local studio in our area that specialized in country and folk called Flying Whale Recording Studios. And it was a legit professional recording studio, you know, just got this thing called Pro Tools in there that, you know, everybody was talking about and stuff. So the producer there was really cool. He cut us a incredibly cheap deal. I think it was like $400 or something like that for like a 2-day session, like a full day of recording. And then the following day we could go there and mix and master and stuff like that. So we just said, fuck it. And on January 1st of 2005, we went into Flying Whale Recording Studio, not having a remote fuck how to record, what goes into recording, producing, editing, no idea about anything. So it was crash course in actual recording and shit. So we just went in there, wheeled in, set up the fucking cabs. He stuck the mics in there and we played live. Like the actual recording was like us playing live. We weren't even in isolated booths yet or single tracking for a multi-track recording or anything like that. So because of the limited budget, the limited time, we just went in there and just beat the shit out of those 5 fucking songs. Raw as hell, completely raw. But I think, you know, listening back to it, the energy and enthusiasm more than made up for the lack of like musical precision or, you know, I mean, we're barely, you know, 18 years old at that time. So it was just kind of like, you know, dive off the diving board into the deep end and let's see what the fuck happens. And when it got done, we got the master copy of it. We were so pissed off at that time still. We were like, well, what are we going to call this fucking thing? And communal, like, it's like a whole, we just said, we're like, well, you know, fuck it. Let's just call it like, you know, fuck you or fuck this or fuck that. And we settled on fuck everything. So our first EP was literally called Fuck Everything. And I had a fucking Grim Reaper flipping off like the viewer and stuff like that. So we took this, took the master, took a bunch of burned CDs. I was sitting in my room every night for the last half of my senior year, burning copies of this CD. And our drummer in our class drew up the actual fucking cover. So it was Atrocity, The Reaper, and then Fuck Everything on it. And we printed these out like at Kinko's and Staples and stuff, cut them up, put them in the CD trays and stuff like that. And literally just started fucking selling them. We gave a few out to our closest friends. There were also some metal friends, and they kind of just spread that out there. And then people wanted to buy them, so we started to sell them and stuff. And it got to the point where I was making like $300 like a week, just like on these demo like sales and stuff. So the word was really, really starting to get out there with that, you know. And it was that whole just, you know, DIY fucking, you know, fuck it. And of course, you know, like the title of it, you know, everybody thought was ridiculous. I mean, fuck everything. I mean, it's just like that just shows you our mindset at that point. Just fuck everything, fuck it, we hate everything, fuck it, you know. And it got the word out. Like the word got on and word got out within the Roseville, Sacramento area, you know, which is about an hour south of where we are. And then that's what started to get the real wheel turning in terms of like, you know, we have a product now with our name on it. How do we take this product and push this more and actually get this out there more? Well, we got to play shows. So being 17 going into 18, once we hit 18, it was like, oh, you guys can actually legitimately start playing most clubs. And that was what really started to get us into the Sacramento area and actually playing to a broader audience, playing the club circuit in Sacramento.
Interesting. Now, it seems to be the case. This is a rarity. So I have to ask this. After high school, usually bands kind of just break up or people go their separate ways because they're going to college and whatnot. So I'm just kind of curious, the chemistry that you and Derek specifically have that's kept you going together for so many years. I mean, how do you explain that specific chemistry between the two of you?
I think we were like a lot of bands. Like I collect band books, like band biographies and, you know, everything from Motley Crue's The Dirt. I mean, like I have a whole library, like so many bands to put them out there. And I collect them because I feel like there's a lot to learn, like the do's and don'ts from a lot of these musicians that have legitimately been in the industry and have gone through how turbulent it is, the highs, the lows, and all that kind of thing. And out of all of those, the difference I think with like, you know, like a band like mine in that sense is between Derek and I, we were really like good friends before then. And that has always been like a huge factor within our band and having that kind of like foundation there, you know, especially like, you know, guitar, drums. I mean, that's like that right there as a foundation was super important. So I think as much as we didn't have opportunities and the ability for exposure like a lot of other bands did, we did have that friendship. I know it sounds corny as shit, you know, like it's some fucking John Hughes movie or some fucking thing I'm talking about right now. But we were lucky to have we're really lucky to have that friendship, and it's been there ever since, you know, because he's a fan just like I am. And our whole thing was always rooted in just being fans with instruments. You know, we had no idea any of this is even going to remotely get out there. I mean, the fact I'm talking to you guys right now is an honor, just knowing that there's other metalheads out there and stuff like that. So for us, it always has that root as the fan, you know, and I think that really is the embryonic thing that has always stayed there with us is we are fans. We just happen to play instruments, you know.
Interesting. Yeah, again, you're absolutely right on that. So, obviously, you guys, you know, you continue with Devastator. Obviously, the name change and whatnot, and you would go in to record Crush and Kill, the EP. Now, I'm curious, after the EP gets recorded and whatnot, how does Thrash Unlimited play into people discovering that specific EP? Because I specifically remember this and pretty much all three of your EPs on like a Thrash Unlimited and seeing it on there. So I can only imagine what it did for you guys at that specific time period.
Yeah, it was the upgrade with Crush and Kill about a year later after we did, you know, Fuck Everything. We wanted to make it a little bit more presentable and professional in like the buying sense. So we found like a CD manufacturing plant that did, you know, like the jewel cases, did like a sleeve with it and printed and all that. So following year we did like an updated version of those 5 songs, couple new songs on there too. One of them being Crush and Kill, the title track of it. And we went back in the same studio, recorded that there, got the master thing, did the whole press thing in Sacramento. Now having a shrink wrap product was like, for us, again, it was like, oh my God, we have like a fucking CD. We didn't know this was like a thing. You can have a CD, your own band can get its own CD made and not be like, you know, Aerosmith or some shit. Like, it was just like, again, it was like mind blowing for us like that, you know? So with Crush and Kill, we pressed like, I think like about 500 of them and stuff like that, just to have, and that was the new set of current music that we were going to go out there and currently playing shows out there. And with people out there, this is when stuff started to actually get out there, and we started to see stuff popping up online about the band, either little reviews here or there, or a couple songs featured here and there on some stuff. And word of mouth like that kind of like really started going like, oh, there's this really pissed off trio of guys from Northern California that are into like old school music, you know, give them a shot, check them out and stuff like that, you know. And that right there was when we went from playing not just Sacramento, but started going to the Bay Area and playing shows there. We opened up for Vader, which is a fucking awesome band. And that was a really big deal, like going to San Francisco and actually playing, you know, a fucking another club show there, opening up for a legend band like that. So it was like, oh fuck, there's like a shitload of people in the band, you know, I wonder where else there's metal, you know. Right. It kept going from there, you know. And then that's when we started seeing our stuff popping up more on stuff like, you know, Thrash Unlimited and things like that, you know. It's like, oh, now we have another area of visibility for promotion and networking like that.
No doubt. Yeah. And I got to ask you this too, because right around the time you said, you know, that you can actually press your own CDs, that was a hard contact for me personally to find. So how did you specifically get a CD making contact around this time? Did you have other friends that press CDs and that's how that whole thing got started? Because again, this is like pre like almost social media at this point.
Oh yeah. No, it was really interesting. So earlier in the year in 2005, right when we put out Fuck Everything, March of that year, we got an actual really big break, I guess, for like a band at our level. Was a opening for Creator at a local club called the Boardwalk, and we didn't even know it, but there was a camera crew there, and they actually did a double camera video of us, and they put it out on DVD and stuff like that. And their dude, whose name is Zoran Theodorovic, he's a local metal representative dude, like Capital Chaos and stuff. And we hadn't met him at that point. We didn't know who he was, and he filmed us and stuff, and really started a lifelong friendship with him. And we asked him, like, well, where's this DVD stuff getting made? So he directed us to the manufacturing spot that we ended up getting Crush and Kill actually fucking pressed at and stuff like that. So you can get DVDs pressed there. You can get a bunch of other stuff copied and made there too. So he referenced us to that, and that was like, oh, okay, cool. You know, like that was like a big thing, because now it was like we can physically record our own music, we can take that product and now get it, you know, made on our own. You know, because it's still at this point, the notion of a label or management or anybody doing anything besides us just was like, it wasn't even like a thought process. You know, it was all DIY, you know. So
Right.
you know, thanks to Zoran and his company, they referenced us to that manufacturing spot.
Oh,
So-
cool. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so it was shortly after this time that what I noticed, because this is how long I go back with you guys, is that you started really venturing outside of Sacramento massively just off this one demo, because that demo is how I discovered you. I don't even remember how I got the demo, but I remember we had played Barstow together. You came here to Vegas a couple times. I remember. I always
Yeah.
remember seeing you guys traveling to the Bay Area, going even farther north. If I remember, like, you guys were always really just pushing yourselves. What did that? First off, did that demo encourage that and help that? And secondly, was that your guys's just in your mind, like, we just have to go play everywhere, doesn't matter, and we'll drive all night to get there, and then right as soon as the show's over, we'll turn around and go back to Sacramento? Is that
yeah, it really was at that point, because I think, like, by starting where we were, like in the Colfax, like Woods area, and then going to Sacramento, which is a major metropolitan, you know, city capital of California, realizing that, you know, people were buying these CDs and stuff, and then going to the Bay and seeing basically the same results sales wise, but increased because of the metal population in the Bay is obviously much larger than it is within the Sacramento area usually. You know, it was like, if this is working like this, you know, why not try to keep this going? Why not try to push this and see where we're going? You know, especially at that point, you know, we were, you know, college was like a thing and stuff like that, but it was not like on our radar as a main thing. The whole thing at this point was getting the band out there and getting it anywhere in front of any audience in any city that we could. So, I mean, there's been so many during that Crush and Kill period. There's been along the way so many cities and forgotten shows and stuff that we played, just trying to, you know, pollinate and blanket the whole California area at this point, going into Southern California and into Southern Nevada and stuff like that as well, you know, because we were just like, fuck it, you know. I mean, a lot of these bands, like in certain cities, they have like that tight network of people that they can either feed off of or be inspired from, whereas with us, we didn't have anybody. There wasn't a reference point besides like ourselves. Like, nobody else was like playing or doing the style within our area. So the only person or people we had to rely on basically was like our own band and the limitations or not that we wanted to make for that band. So at that point, It was, let's just try to get this out there. You know, fuck it, dude. Like, what are we doing right now? You know, we're not focused on school right now. Well, we need to take the energy and the drive that we have. If it's not for education or working a 9 to 5 right now and stuff like all the time, we need to direct that into the band. You know, I mean, we all were working jobs, just not to the extent of like career oriented, you know, because the band was like numero uno, you know, that was it. So we just, you know, packed up our gear, packed up the copies of Crush and Kill, and just booked and tried to play anywhere we possibly could, getting it out there, you know, and you know, people picked it up and it started, you know, making a reference point for us. Like, is that like a name? Like, oh, you need a band, you need an opener for that show in that area. Contact these guys and stuff. So connection wise, it broadened our appeal in terms of like a network and connections like that. It was very important in that sense.
Right. And you're talking locally here. So my question becomes, when was the point when you started to discover like bands out in like the LA market? Because that's when like this thrashing was really booming with obviously the Thrasher to Miles and whatnot. So when was that point of you discovering bands such as like Fueled by Fire, Merciless Death,
Yeah.
those kind of bands?
Right around the end of 2005 into early 2006 is when MySpace became this new platform that everybody was utilizing either for their own social endeavors or especially with the band, you could really connect and start building a following and networking that way. And that was a huge important tool in finding other bands and people and like-minded musicians that are out there. And one day I just happened to come across, like, I think it was a YouTube video of them playing, I think, a Whiskey a Go-Go show, and it was like a short, like 3-minute clip of them playing, and it was up from like a vantage point, and it was just this sea of metalheads, stage diving, circle pits, like the whole thing, and it was Merciless Death playing, and it was like, oh my god, who's this band? Like, we need to meet these guys. Like, there's another fucking band, another angry trio playing fucking thrash and shit. Like, we gotta get something fucking going with these guys, you know. And they had that huge audience, they had the crowd, they had the networks, and it wasn't just them. It turns out there's a whole giant family tree of other like-minded bands down there. So for us, it was just like, oh my god, we got to start like networking and trying to play the LA area. That's like, this is like the not only just like a market, but like in terms of a brotherhood and like a family and other fans, you know, we really got to try to like play gigs down there and stuff like that. So like opening for Sodom, you know, we were one of the opening bands like on that. That was a big deal for us playing that show at the Key Club, because a lot of those bands weren't actually on that show, but from networking with us and chatting, they went to the show and supported us at it. So like John Kelvin from Warbringer and fucking Henry from Witch Haven, fucking the Merciless Death guys, like all these guys were there, you know, and it was so awesome, like thinking that like, oh man, we have like a brotherhood here, a family here that we could actually play shows with, and then they can fucking come north. They can start coming up to the Bay Area. They can start coming to SAC and try getting like stuff going with that, kind of like this cross scene thing going right there, you know? So with that show, like opening for Sodom and stuff like that, that really kind of like ingrained us and started that like friendship partnership down there with those bands. And that's where we started playing shows all the time. So from that period onward, we were coming down to Southern California, at least I would say about 4 to 5 times, like, you know, throughout the year and stuff. And that's not even counting cities like, you know, in between, like the Stocktons, the Fresnos, and you know, stuff like that. So yeah, that MySpace really got the whole thing going with like Southern California, and just seeing how giant of a thing they had going. It was like, even to this day, thinking back on it, I was like, holy fuck, dude, that's a lot of metalheads right there.
Sure. Now, when does Devastator become a 4-piece?
Devastator became a 4-piece. Well, the thing is again, with like the isolation and just, you know, thrash, speed metal, old school metal, just never really being a thing within our area. There's of course other genres, symphonic metal, black metal, death metal, and stuff like that. You know, there's many bands like that within our area. And because of that, there they had the resources for other musicians and stuff like that. Whereas for us in our genre, people just were not picking up instruments, whether it was bass, guitar, drums, or whatever like that. So it wasn't like there was a huge resource like wellspring to choose from for other musicians and guitar players in particular. So we were kind of a trio out of necessity because there really was nobody else. And it just remained that way, you know, for the longest time. So we always wanted to have another guitar player, you know, especially, I mean, I love Priest and Maiden. So my whole thing was wanting to have like dual solos, dual harmonies and stuff like that for the longest time. So right around, I think it was like 2000, end of 2009, 2010, this kid in this area actually, his name was Clark. He actually somehow got a hold of our material, and he became like a really big fan. And I had like run into him a couple of times like that, just saying, "Hey, what's up, dude? You know, love the Maiden t-shirt," and, you know, things like that. And we parted ways. So right around 2009 is when he actually came over to my house. He actually like found out where I lived, and I hear a knock on the door, and it's him. Like he's there, and he's kind of standing there, and he's got a couple of his buddies with him. It was like his senior year of high school, and he's just like, "Oh, hey man, like, what's going on?" And I'm just like standing there, kind of like looking around, like, "Oh, hey, can I help you, dude? Like, are you like selling something? Like, what's up, you know?" And he's like, "Oh no, man, just chilling and stuff, man. Just like love the band, and yeah, I've been playing guitar and stuff like that too. Maybe we can hang sometime." And I'm like, "Fuck yeah, dude. Keep in touch. You know, finish your school and hit me up whenever, dude." And we kept in touch and stuff like that. And he kept playing. I kept urging him every time I saw him to keep practicing, keep playing. You know, the cliched, you know, you got to play it until you hate it kind of thing. So you ingrain it, you know, mentally to play it really well, you know. And he started to get really, really competent on it, you know. And by the time we started jamming, you know, it was clear that he had a knack too, you know. And it was like, keep pushing yourself, keep doing this, dude. And you know, would you like to maybe join the band at some point, you know? And he was definitely enthusiastic and psyched on that. And before we knew it, we just started jamming. I started showing him, you know, the riffs and stuff like that. And we just kept going, and he kept practicing and getting better and better and better. And that was like literally right at the same time that we got contacted by Devastator. This whole time there's been this other fucking Devastator again there, and they're a signed band, and they've been going for a while too. So they're like, "Yeah, you can't, you know, you're gonna have to change the name and shit like that." And I'm just like, you know, dude, this whole fucking changing name thing is really like pissing me off, because we're like building, but every time we have to change, you have to make that aware and visible to, you know, the people, your fans, your friends, everybody out there, that now you're going through another fucking name change, which is a huge pain in the ass, as anybody will tell you. And I was just like, dude, this fucking band, like, with the potential, but these name changes is a fucking blessing and a curse, dude. It's pissing me the fuck off. And there's a yin and yang here. And it was just like, wait, blessing, curse, bless, curse, blessed curse. It's a blessed curse. This band is a fucking blessed curse, you know? And that's when we started calling ourselves Blessed Curse. So Blessed Curse became Blessed Curse right when he became the second guitar player in our band. So those two things kind of like combined right at that moment. You know, it was, again, a blessing. We finally got a second guitar player, and a fucking curse, because now it's like, fuck, we got to like alert everybody now we're another band.
So when you chose, right. So when you chose Blessed Curse, did you have it in your mind already? Like, fuck, we should check this out on, like, do a search on the internet, make sure there's no other fucking bands of Blessed Curse. Yep. So we have to change it a fourth time. And okay.
Yeah, no, exactly. Because, you know, the funny thing is you know, you get enthusiastic and it's like, oh, there's a solution. But knowing how it is, I'm like, you know, this is going to be another blessing and a curse, because we're going to settle on this, and some other fucker is already going to have this copyrighted. It's already going to be another thing. It'll be some industry. It'll be a car or some sex toy or some shit out there, you know? And like literally, luckily with research, no one fucking had it, even though it's a quite common phrase. You hear it like, oh, that's a blessing and a curse, or oh, that's a curse, well, that's a blessing. For whatever fucking reason, no one copyrighted it and no one had it. So we were very lucky, blessed, to actually have that is a name to choose from. So that's when we settled on that. And luckily nobody had that, I'm sure there's like 940,000 of them now out there, or some shit or some variation of it. But, at the time there was nobody else. So we had to stamp that on that,
Can I ask you something even before the name change and whatnot? I've always been curious why Devastator never made a full-length, quote-unquote, record. Why only EPs at this point?
I think with the EPs, it was just a matter of trying to keep the momentum and just like budgetary constraints and stuff. Because after we did Crush and Kill, we networked with another band, this time in the Bay Area, called Hatchet. And at the time, Hatchet was like more of a speed metal, power metal band. They're like a 5-piece and stuff like that. And their lead singer at the time, Marcus Kirchen, and I became really, really fucking good friends. And we're always like chatting and networking and getting shows booked and stuff. And drummer had their own makeshift recording studio. So he was able to get us in. And for very cheaply, we went in and did another 5-song, or I think it was 3 to 5 songs for this new EP called the Slaughtered Like Pigs EP. So that was like our third EP, like coming up on that. That right there was basically the mode at that point, until we were going to have a proper amount of time and a budget to actually woodshed without losing the momentum. Because at this time, it really was the momentum thing, because by this point, things started to get actually really fucking competitive. And to really start getting, you really started to see that there was something brewing here, with a lot of the bands, because every time there was like 5 other bands popping up in one city, 5 other bands were popping up in another city. So before you knew it, this whole fucking huge scene in California was just going over, like the whole state, So I think it was a lot of that had to do with just trying to keep the momentum and not be away from that during that beginning embryonic stage of trying to get known in California, when there were so many other bands out there at that point starting to do the same type of networking, so that was basically the reason with like the EP thing, instead of just doing a full length. We already had enough material for the full length, which would become the first Blessed Curse record. It just was a matter of logistics by that point.
Interesting. So let me go off of. So obviously you changed the name to Blessed Curse. A couple of years kind of passed before before you actually record the self-titled record. Now, 2 questions for you. Why Juan Ortega to engineer and produce this, and when does M Theory come in?
Oh, okay. So the thing that this is from the Slaughter Like Pigs EP that we did, again, it was another just like rapid, keep up the momentum, raw kind of thing. Again, we got to the point where it was, we want to up this factor. We know we can manufacture stuff now, get that pressed on our own. What can we do now to kind of up that game? Not just musically, like skill wise, because again, through that whole period of time, it was still the emphasis was on, got to keep practicing, got to keep the routines up. You got to keep building and trying to get better and learn as much and digest as much as you can musically. So right around the end of 2007 into 2008, our bass player, Pat Hamby, at the time, we were going to LA, unfortunately got into a car accident, and it kind of knocked us out of the loop for a bit. So there was a huge chunk of downtime because he was dealing with finances and legal bullshit from this guy down there and all that, it ended up getting settled. So it was just a giant pain in the ass, but it put us on pause for a while. So knowing that we weren't going to be able to, network, get another bass player in there, and we weren't even interested in that kind of thing anyway at the time. We wanted Pat. We wanted like the brotherhood, the trio to still be intact. So as we were waiting for him to get his stuff sorted out, Derek and I started writing and pushing the boundaries of the stuff we already had. And that's when we started, at this time talking with Marco Barbieri and stuff like that. We were like, we need to up this a little bit, in the studio production wise and all that. And with him and some connections with stuff like that, we were able to get into Trident Studios for the first time for the Devastator Burn the Beast EP. So this is now like the fourth fucking EP. I'm starting to lose track at this fucking point. But this next EP was the thing where it was like we finally got into Trident Studios and I mean like legitimately real recording, produced, and saw how an actual real recording studio works. And had that outside perspective from Juan in terms of like a team player, but having that critical eye that, you could do that better. That was good. Now make it good, like that whole kind of like thing where, you haven't experienced that up to that point. You haven't been pushed at that point yet. So that EP was really, really, vital in that sense because it actually got us in a real professional recording studio, and like, well, I mean, we were just like totally like kids in a candy store in there because, he's got like the couch and the control room and the isolation booths and his whole, resume of working with all these famous underground bands and stuff like that. Sadist came in there while we were recording. Eric Peterson from Testament showed up a couple of times. And like for us, it was like, oh my God, dude, sign this. Like, can you sign this real quick? So, I mean, it was definitely an upping of the game factor right there, and that right there was like where we got the product to a point where it's like, okay, let's now really push this. And that's when we started really working with Marco and later into M Theory and stuff like that, which would go into the first record is when right around that period of time is when he actually started noodling on the idea of his own project with his own label mark and all that.
Now, did he see you guys play live or something? Is that the connection there?
I believe so. I think he saw us. I think he may have got wind at least about us just by online stuff or shows here and there. But I think I actually met him for the first time in a Vegas show. I think it was when we were playing one of our Vegas gigs with AOB and stuff. And I think that was like, he's just, hey, like, what's up? Yeah, I'm Marco and stuff like that, good show and stuff like that. Keep in contact, keep doing, what you guys are doing and stuff. And let's, go from there as time goes on, So I think it was that Vegas show was the first time I had actually, came across him before.
Sure. Now let's go to the Blessed Curse record per se. And so obviously you touched upon the choice to work with Juan again. And obviously did he bring more of a cohesive, just like tightness to you guys? Was this the moment when you worked with a click track for the first time? I mean, or how did he work differently than what you had done previous as far as his particular method of recording?
Well, this one was the definite eye opener in the sense that, we had saved money for it. Like, so the budget thing was finally like going to be covered. Like, okay, we're going in for a full length. So we actually stayed in the studio. We slept we had sleeping bags and actually slept in the fucking studio because we were there day in and day out, for I think like 5 days. And then the weekend we left. And then the following week we came back to finish up and stuff. So it was kind of like a 2-week project of just getting everything done and recorded. So, we were busting ass. We came in already really well prepared and stuff like that, well rehearsed and stuff. And it was the first time where we were in there where there was the time thing. There wasn't the whole, you have like 3 hours to get 3 songs done kind of thing like that with him. Like, it was really like, going through vocal lines, going through, drum fills, like, let's try it this way. Why don't you sing this an octave lower? And this other one, do it really high like a screech, and we'll combine them and even them out and kind of see how they sound, Same with the guitar solo, same with harmonizing on certain riffs for rhythms. If you want a certain chunk to come out more on the guitar, just track that particular chunk and then layer it kind of thing. So it really was a crash course and an eye opener in seeing professionally how bands done it, because he treated us just like he would, a Testament or an Exodus or a Sadist or anything like that, So it was really like the whip cracking and, this is good. You guys want to work with me, my name's going to be on this, it's gonna be like this, and we needed that at that point. That was the spot that we needed. We needed that push. We needed that outside perspective, really, to tell us and to hear with that outside eye that this could be done, tweaked a little bit better. It could be looked at a little bit better. Why not try it this way and stuff like that? And it was really our first full professional endeavor, because it was our debut album. So we wanted it to be everything that we had worked up to at that point. So he really drove us, and he really, take after take, if it needed that, just on any instrument, playing with the click and stuff like that, with Pro Tools, seeing realizing that, certain feels, like a certain riff sounds a certain way with a certain beat per minute compared to another riff that has a different feel with a different BPM, and saying, oh shit, we didn't even think about it that way. Can we punch that in? Can we do one and then the other kind of thing like that? Or do we just keep it at that one tempo, And that was all a learning process, just going through that. And it was really, really fascinating, and just being in there and getting that project busted out like that.
Right. And not to obviously to go off of your point here, not to like downplay it by any stretch, but this technically is still your first and only full length. So obviously I hope we can get more into why that is. Now, obviously the record comes out. It's you got a killer cover on it, man. I really dig the album cover on the first Blessed Curse record so far.
Thanks,
and I'm just curious what you wanted the album cover to be portrayed, and did that goal actually get met? So your whole concept of the album cover.
Just with the name and stuff like that, like in particular, like the blessing and a curse, the notion, we've always been interested hardcore in not practicing, obviously, but the occult, medieval history, folklore, myth, horror movies, fantasy, dark fantasy, and stuff like that, and one of the main things that has always intrigued us was the notion of lycanthropy, and seeing where that was, and how that was basically the first serial killers that were ever known in this world, so the way to explain it was through the eyes of, a person can turn into a wolf and they go and kill people, which, as we know, as cool as that is, it's not a thing. It's the mental thing, so the notion of, you have the ability to kill people and get away with it, was a very savage and dark notion and stuff. So that is what incorporated that into that album cover, which we call the BC Beast. And that's our mascot. We actually call him Larry, who's named after Larry Talbot, which is Lon Chaney Jr.'s character in 1941's The Wolfman and stuff. So yeah, it's we identify a lot with that, because I do think there is that dark side to a lot of people and all that, and it's fascinating and horrifying at the same time. And the fantasy element is great, the werewolf is just cool as fuck, it just being what it is, but the reality of it, that there's people out there that do kill people because of what they think or what they do, is very primal and savage. So that's what we were trying to do, incorporating that into that album cover. And Mark Sasso, that did it. He's done D.O. He did work for Lord of the Rings movies and stuff like that. He did such a fantastic job. We had no idea it was even going to be that way, like, at all. We gave him the concept, and a few months go by, he sends us the roughs, and I was just like, holy fuck, dude, this looks amazing. And he's like, well, when you guys approve, I'll send the color version, and a couple months after that, he sends it to us, and we just got it. And as a band, we just like had it on the laptop. We just stared at it for like 40 minutes fucking straight. Just like, is this our fucking album cover, dude? Like, is this us? Like, this is going to be ours. I mean, it was a blessing that it turned out that way. We couldn't have been any happier. It was so cool that first art turned out that way, and then we continue to work with them to this day for art. art stuff.
Right. And when does, so obviously this comes out, so the record comes out, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, you either put it out yourselves or you work with a different label than M Theory, and I know they get involved somewhat later. So again, that my confusion hopefully will be rectified by you. But so can you just explain that whole era when the record just comes out, and initially the reaction for towards the record, because it's 2012, so it's kind of almost the end period to the quote unquote new wave of thrash metal.
Yeah. So once we got, you know, the stuff packaged up and all that, we were talking with Marco and he was starting, you know, his M Theory project up. We did that US with distribution with that. So we had M Theory covering it for the US, and then in Europe we had Cyclone Empire, which was another distribution deal that we did too, so it could be available over there as well. So that kind of like solidified that, so people over there could get it or look for it and stuff, and the vice versa here in the USA. And that really was like the foundation for, you know, okay, now what do we do? Well, we got to go out there and we got to play for it, you know. And that's right when we just started playing shows and getting booked. And you know, like the response that we got, you know, was very, very positive. And for us especially, it was, again, going back to just that whole notion when we were 14 of just like, you know, we have a full-length album done with professionally recorded professional art, Marco Barbieri, you know, metal industry wizard, you know, helping us out with that. I mean, it very much was a dream come true to us. I know that happens to like a lot of bands that are out there and stuff like that, but for us, like coming from where we came from, it meant the whole fucking world to us. You know, it was just like, oh my God, we have an album out. Who the fuck ever thought this? You know, so we just, at that point, it was just like, just get it out there, hit the ground running, and keep fucking playing shows for it, you know?
And with the contract, I hopefully I can ask this, and I'm just going to. If you can tell me no or whatever it is, but I have to ask, with signing the contract with M Theory, I'm just kind of curious what they were expecting. It was this like a 3-album deal, 1-album deal, just like, I'm just curious. Was it only a distro deal? I mean, how can you explain some of the contractual stuff?
It was at the time. It's M Theory's actually like really evolved a lot in various departments since then. Like really like just blown up and shit. It's fucking awesome. At the time, it was just for distribution. It was very, you know, like this is cool. This is like my side thing. Like, I'll help you guys out. Let's have like this thing where, you know, people can come to the site and order copies. You know, you have that ability to go online and see it with links, digital distribution and stuff like that. So in terms of it was a very innocent contract, if you will, with that. You know, it was basically open-ended. It was like what you guys want to do and what we collectively think would be cool to do, and we'll go from there as time goes on. You know, because as you know, like the industry is so up and down and so much bullshit, you know, happens all the fucking time. It was at that point, you know, it was like, let's keep this cool and let's just see, you know, where this can go and stuff like that, you know. And at that time too, he started to, you know, other bands were getting on his roster, and he was starting to do a lot of stuff and get them on the M Theory ship too.
Right. And so why not capitalize on doing another full length just right away after the Blessed Curse record? Because it had some time had passed in between, you know, that and the Beware of the Night EP again. So obviously this is again the only full length in your career. So why not capitalize and just go with another full length in like 2014, 2015 kind of era? Was what happened after the Blessed Curse record kind of came out that faltered that from becoming a reality?
Well, the thing is I'm sure Shannon and many other musicians, and you yourself will probably know, like just knowing what goes into this industry and what it does to certain people, good and bad. By this point, we had been going like for about 8 years solid at this point. I mean, like really just like going, just like every day is just band and stuff. And at this point, our drummer, Derek Bean, you know, my best friend, he was going through a lot of not midlife crisis kind of things, but a lot of internal shit with his like home life and the whole notion of either, you know, school career oriented or music in the band kind of thing. And at that point, he was very, very conflicted and stuff like that. So um a break period needed to happen. So while we were on the road for it, you know, he basically had a mental breakdown while we were in Salt Lake City and stuff like that. It was incredibly intense. It was incredibly revealing and humbling all at the same time. You know, I mean, I wouldn't wish anybody that, you know, even all my worst enemies and stuff like that. You know, I mean, it was really, really rough and stuff like that. So what it came down to was the fact that he just needed to, you know, start the engines up again. He needed to clear out a lot of mental baggage and bullshit because at that point too, you know, I mean, we were all feeling it from various degrees. Just the whole, like, you know, what Shannon was saying, just getting in the fucking vehicle and just going and stuff, you know. You do that, you're going to burn out at some point, you know. And I think, I mean, it could have been anybody. It can happen to anybody. There's nothing, you know, unique in that sense with it. He was just at that point with the debut album and the momentum behind it and trying to push that, you know, it was just too much at that point. You know, he needed a break. And collectively we needed a break as well. To be honest, we did, even as much as it was like, no, you gotta keep going, you gotta keep hitting that grindstone and stuff like that. We all collectively needed a chunk to kind of just, you know, reevaluate stuff, you know, take some time and get further newer material going anyway, you know. So that was kind of like that period of time where instead of immediately going from the first album directly into a second album material and stuff like that, that's the reason why that didn't happen, is because certain things, certain cogs in the wheel needed to get, you know, worked on and greased up again and reevaluated and stuff like that, you know. Definite behind the music kind of like bullshit right there, you know. And a lot of many bands have gone through certain things like that, you know. It's just one of those things. It was unfortunate, you know, at the time, but you know, it just showed that we were at that point after so many gigs and traveling and the hotels and the grind and the sound check, the whole fucking shebang that goes with it. We just needed a chunk to just chill for a while, you know.
Totally, dude. Trust me, being on the road is a stressful thing sometimes, you know. It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, obviously, so let me ask you this, Tyler. So obviously, after that much needed break, why not come out guns blazing with another full length? Why just do again an EP? Obviously, you do the Beware of the Night with Juan Ortega again. Why not come out with a full length around this time?
I think like at that point too, by the time it came out, because we started writing for that right around 2015, and by this point we had gotten a new bass player and a second guitar player in the band, and we're actually active in Sacramento. We weren't active up in this area, and where we were actually based in Sacramento at this point. So that was, connection wise, was really good. I think at that point it was almost kind of like, let's reintegrate and go from there. Let's because we had that mishap, or if you want to call it a pause to rejuvenate and stuff, let's play around with another EP, you know, get some new music out there and go from there, you know. And that was the whole reason why. Now, the material for the second album at this point was already getting written and was like kind of like a separate thing on the back burner. This 5-song EP, the Beware of the Night EP, was kind of its own thing, exclusive to this new lineup and getting back in, because by this point Derek had rejoined the band per se and was good to go and stuff like that again. So we were like, let's just fucking make some new music and just get out there and just start networking, you know, because by this point in 2016 we had really seen the ups and the downs of people getting into metal and thrash and then leaving metal and thrash. several times. You know, people go their own way, they get married, they want to have kids, they want to go to school, career, job, all that kind of thing. So by that point, we had seen several waves of that, of people coming and going. So we were just kind of like, you know, let's test the waters. Who's out there? You know, what are the other bands going out there? What's LA doing right now? What's the Bay Area been up to? You know, what's other cities up to in bands and stuff like that, you know? So it's kind of like getting a new product out there and getting the engine revving again like that to network and see what was even out there, you know?
And where do you guys go from here in terms of a new full-length record? Because again, it's been now 5 years at this point, so it's like you guys always do like a 5-year gap in between releases. So where are we at?
Hopefully that'll change.
Right. Well, where are we at in terms of getting a new Blessed Curse record? Now the final sophomore album, and obviously this won't be a sophomore slump, will it? Because it's been 10 years now. So hopefully, no sophomore slumps here. So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, with this, where we're at now, after that whole fucking era, you know, we're back, and we just been writing, you know, with this whole fucking stall again with the COVID thing. We immediately, you know, we were playing shows and getting that whole thing going, but then when everything froze, we immediately shifted into writing mode. And it was just like, again, a fuck it moment. Like, you know, we don't know when we're going to be able to play gigs again, when we can get together properly. All this shit with COVID has really affected everything. Let's go into writing mode. So immediately just started writing for our second record. So all of 2020 was spent just writing and playing, you know, isolated, of course. But Derek and I were communicating online back and forth with the material and stuff like that. So that's what we were doing. So by the time 2021 rolled around, summer of it, we already had a whole new set of songs for the second length album, and we're able to play shows again. So from, you know, like last summer till now, we've been doing like one-off shows, and went into the studio, a local studio this time in Sacramento called Pus Cavern Studios. And it's just been great. We've just been periodically going in there and recording and stuff like that. So we're right now in the midst of finishing up our second record right now. So that's basically where we're at, you know. And since the material has been there and stuff like that, it's had enough time to incubate and to get, like, you know, looked at from different angles, experimented with, jammed on what works, maybe shift things here and there and stuff like that. So recording has been really streamlined right now. It's been really just go in, get the songs done, come back out, you know, book another date, go in there. Because we're all juggling jobs and stuff like that in between, and trying to, you know, work that out like that in between, you know. So we're definitely on that second album and getting that done and all that. In fact, we have a new lyric video single for one of the tracks off of it that is going to be dropping very, very shortly, probably within the next couple of weeks and stuff. So yeah, we're definitely in the mode to finally get shit out there, you know.
Is this all through Marco and M3 Audio as well, or is this more on your own? Or
I think right now we're going at it kind of like either on our own, but we'll see, you know, where we're at, because there has been that gap period of time. You know, M Theory has developed, you know. It would be great, you know, if something can transpire on that too. You know, I mean, Marco's amazing and stuff like that. So, I mean, we want to try to get it out there anywhere as much as humanly possible, you know. And it's just good that we're finally at this point now where we can finally say, oh, okay, now we have this product, you know, coming around the corner and shit like that. Let's get it out there and let's see what options are like out there with it, you know. And as much as we're not actually recording with Juan, we're still in contact with him, and he's actually going to be doing the mixing and the mastering job with us on that too. So we're going to finish it up in SAC and then shoot it over to him, and, you know, so he can work his Bay Area magic on that, you know.
Smart man. Now, lastly, before we get out of here, I want to thank you seriously for giving us a couple hours of your time with me and Shannon here. But where is
no problem, man. Anytime.
Where is usually the best place for people to support you the most? Do you like sending people through the label or through your Bandcamp? Can you give me just all the links for anything Blessed Curse related?
For direct like merch and stuff like that, definitely mtheoryaudio.com in their store. If you just go to mtheory's store and you just type in Blessed Curse in the search thing for their bands, because he has a whole roster of bands now, it'll come up with some merch on there, which is a great place to go to for tunes. I mean, we're on Apple Music, iTunes, definitely Spotify if you can. We're on all those platforms. And of course, Bandcamp and stuff like that too. Those are all great outlets if people could check us out that way. It's great that stuff is like there, and there's that ability now compared to like how it was like, decade plus ago when that stuff really wasn't established as it is now. And of course, Facebook and stuff like that too, messaging, networking that way. If bands want to play certain gigs with us, networking on that, we'll swap shows, that kind of thing. So we're always game for things like that,
Absolutely. Well, Tyler, appreciate a moment of your time to do this with us. Another episode of Poppitt's Corner, guys. We're out of here. Cheers.